Okay, here we are with the late 2011 MacBook Pro. This is the 17-inch 2.4 gig unit, so let's have a look at the specification of it. Okay, first thing you'll notice, 2.4 gig i7, it's got 16 gigabytes of RAM in it. It's got the dual graphics. It's currently running on the discrete AMD Radeon at the moment, and it's running OS X Lion 10.7.2. So let's have a look and just see what's unusual about it. Well, the first thing you'll notice is the storage. You'll be able to see that I've put in a 256 gig SSD drive alongside a 750 gig physical drive. The way I've done that is I've removed the DVD drive so I could put the SSD drive in where the DVD drive should be, known as the OptiBay, and also kept the existing physical drive. It's an incredibly powerful setup. I never use the DVD drive anyway, so it's no big loss for me. It essentially means I get the power and the performance of the SSD unit while also getting the benefit of having a large amount of physical storage in the machine. The other thing that's unusual, let's have a look at the memory. You'll see that I've got two 8 gigabyte slot-ins in there, so we've got 16 gig in total. The price of these has come down quite considerably now. I think I got both of these chips for around £150 each. I'll confirm that in the blog anyway. Having that amount of RAM available is incredibly useful for things like virtualization. I can run lots of guests at the same time. It's very useful for things like software demos and for development, that sort of stuff. A few other things worth looking at. Let's have a look at the actual main system report. Okay, first thing, we'll look at the storage. You'll notice that both of the drive channels now are capable of 6 gig connectivity. Most of the early 2011 units were capable of that as well, but the very first refresh in 2011, only one of the ports was showing as a 6 gig port. You'll also notice now that the SSD is connecting at 6 gig. In my early 2011 MacBook Pro, I had lots of issues with SATA 3 SSDs not working properly. I had to in the end resort back to using a SATA 2 device. Since I've upgraded to the late 2011 unit, I've not had these issues with the SATA 3 performance. The SSD in there, it's a Crucial M4, is connected at SATA 3 speeds, a 6 gig, and has been working absolutely fine since I put it in. You'll also notice down here I've got trim support enabled for this drive as well. That's done using a driver hack, so again I'll link to that in the blog just to show you how to do that. I've not had any problems with this trim enablement for any of my devices with SSDs in so far. It's been operating brilliantly. You'll see the second drive, is a Toshiba 750 gig physical drive. I use that for all my backup storage and ISO images, all that sort of stuff. The only other thing you'll notice, and a memory, we've got two 8 gig chips in there. Okay, so that's a quick rundown of the hardware. It does seem a little bit more reliable in terms of the SATA performance than I was getting on the previous edition, which is can only be good. Okay, let's have a quick look at Activity Monitor because there's a couple of things in there. Firstly, you'll notice the CPU. CPU is actually showing only one processor. That's not the case. Essentially what it's doing is aggregating all of the processor cores and hyperthreading into one particular representation. You'll notice when we switch into Windows, you'll see all the cores in there. System memory, you'll see I'm hardly using any at the moment because I've not long rebooted. There's 16 gig in it, hardly any of it's allocated. Okay, so let's switch out. Let's have a look at some of the applications and I'll show you how it generally performs. In terms of the application launching, things like that, most of the benefit is going to come from the SATA SSD, the SATA 3 SSD, rather than the general performance of the machine, but I'll give you a rundown anyway, so let's have a look at those. So next, have a look at sort of the general performance. I mean, obviously anything with an SSD is going to be pretty impressive compared to a physical drive. I mean, let's have a look if we fire up things like Excel and Word. There we go. things like PowerPoint. It's just so much faster than a traditional hard drive. Where it really comes into it's well, in fact, one good demo is if I show you here. I've got a folder full of quite a few aliases to applications. Okay, how many is there? I select all of them. There's 20 odd there. What I'll do is I'll just right click and open. You can see the kind of performance you get on application performance there. There you go, it's done. I think you'll agree it's pretty impressive. I can't describe enough the difference an SSD makes to the performance of your machine. To me, it's absolutely revolutionary. I'd find it virtually impossible to go back to using a physical drive again. So let's get these applications shut down and we can maybe have a look at how the performance compares in Windows. It'll take me a minute to get these all closed. Okay, we finally got them all closed. So let's fire up a couple of Windows machines and we'll have a look at the relative performance in there. So the final thing I wanted to look at was basically just the performance of Windows on this machine. Because, I mean, everybody uses Windows, certainly in a work environment. So firstly, what I'll do is I'll show you my Parallels environment. We can have a look at the performance index in there. I'll just fire up Parallels. Okay, so my main office machine is a fully virtual machine, which I tend to keep suspended rather than shut down. So what we'll do is just fire that up. It is currently on the SSD, by the way, so we'll fire that up there. Shouldn't take too long. There we go, and it's ready to go. As you can see, it only takes a few seconds to fire up, makes it incredibly usable. I normally run it in coherence rather than a full desktop, but just for the moment, let's look at the full desktop. Firstly then, let's have a look at the performance index from within Windows. So we'll get the properties, Windows Experience Index. There you go. You can see that it gets a lowest score of 6 for the graphics, which isn't too bad, I don't believe. The 7.6 for the processor, which I think is excellent, and a 6.9 for the hard drive storage. Bear in mind that is on the SSD, so that's why it's such a high score. From a usability point of view, it's incredibly usable. We'll fire up Excel, there you go, there's Word, Visio, there's Project, I'm sure I've got PowerPoint on here as well. There we go, I'm sure you can see that it's incredibly usable. I think I have about 4 gig allocated to this VM. Let's have a look. Yeah, there you go, 4 gig, and if we look at Task Manager, you'll see that I've got all 8 cores allocated as well. Sorry, all 4 cores, but they're enabled for HyperThreading. There's quite a bit of resources to allocate to this machine, but that's my general day-to-day office machine, so I appreciate a bit of power in that. So let's shut that down. What I'll do is I'll suspend it. There we go, suspend, and we'll also have a look at the boot camp setup as well. There we go, that bit's done, so let's get rid of Parallels. I tend to use Fusion for Boot Camp, just to try and keep my environment separate. So what I'll do is I'll fire up Fusion, if I could spell, there we go. And what we'll do is we'll fire up the Boot Camp partition. Let's see how long that takes to boot. Again, my Boot Camp is on the SSD, but it's a physical implementation that I'm also running in the virtual environment here in VMware. To be fair, my work machine here can take a little bit longer to process because, well, like a lot of companies, we have a fairly stringent set of group policies that take a little while to apply. There we go, and we're ready to log in, so I'll just log in there. Okay, so here we are in our boot camp. Bear in mind, of course, I am running it in a virtual at the moment. So let's have a look at the Windows Experience Index here. So we'll get the properties up. There we go. Now it will say it needs to be refreshed because I'm running it now in virtualization, whereas these original figures I got from booting natively. So as you can see, the processor and memory is still pretty high at 7.6. Desktop and the graphics is far higher now at 6.9, and the hard drive's a bit faster as well as a 7.4. So as you can see, the performance is pretty astounding from this unit. So again, if we fire up some of the Office apps, okay, you can see the performance is way more than adequate. Okay, so let's shut that machine down now. Again, in fact, to be fair, in my boot camp, I only have 4 cores allocated, and let me have a look. 2 gig of RAM, so it should feel a little slower than the other Parallels unit that I just showed you. But let's just get this one shut down. While that's shutting down, I'm just going to fire up Parallels as well and run up my suspended machine. There we go. And what I'm going to do is just switch that to Coherence. Get rid of Fusion. Now what Coherence enables you to do is run your virtualized applications, but have them appear as normal windowed applications rather than having to run in a full desktop. You'll see, for example, in my dock now I've got Windows Explorer and my link client, so I can open Explorer, and that's our performance index from earlier, so I can get rid of that. I can also fire up, let me have a look, let's fire up, say, Excel. Okay, you can see how it's a Windows application, but it's fired up as an actual window on the Mac desktop. Okay, this is the way I normally work, to be honest. So I don't have a full Windows desktop. I just run my applications in Coherence mode like that. It's incredibly useful, very workable with a fast machine, and it just feels like you're using one environment rather than multiple ones. And of course, whenever you're ready, you can quit and suspend in whatever form that it's in at the time. And then, of course, when you fire up the machine again, so for example, if I was to restart it, there we go, my applications are started exactly where I left them in the first place. It makes the solution very usable and very quick to fire up and close down. It's a great environment. Okay, well that was a general overview of the late 2011 MacBook Pro in terms of performance. This one has been upgraded quite significantly because it's my main development environment, so it can have a fair bit of demands on it, but I hope you find it interesting and useful.